Hello, my friends, and thank you for joining us today on this episode of Insights. Proved to be a very good episode. I have a special guest with me today and a dear friend, Pieter Elsen, who is an author, a speaker, and a therapist. He is the founder of the Path of Life Center and the author of the book, When Souls Awaken. Pieter, thank you for being here today. It's so good to have you.
I'm so happy to be here.
So, one of the things, or one of the top of mind subjects that are in the ether today is surrounding the whole idea of limiting beliefs. And knowing the work that you do, one of the challenges that you face in working with your clients is being able to break through some of those limiting beliefs. Can you tell me about that?
Well, limiting beliefs is obviously a vast subject, right? I mean, it can be applied at multiple levels. It is individually, of course, the prime reality that we're living with. I mean, the fact that I have been programmed in my early childhood, we know the ideas behind this, that in our first 7 years of our life, we get programmed by our parents, by our environment, by limitations that this body has, or rather that we think we have during the first 7 years of our lives.
Right.
And so, these beliefs are all put into that childhood mind. And this child grows up and doesn't know that this has occurred. And this forms this paradigm, this forms this bubble from which we operate. And there's no one of us that is free from this conditioning.
Right.
The question is, what is the nature of this conditioning? And so when later on, when all of this conditioning has sunken down and it sits there firmly into the unconscious mind, and we're trying to achieve certain things, we're fighting against this programming. And this is about 90%, that's the number is whatever anybody wants to call it, 90, 95%. But the idea is it's the vast majority of our mind is unconscious and it's subject to this conditioning. And so though we have a conscious intention to achieve something or to go somewhere or to make a change, it's that 10% of conscious mind, the intention, versus the unconscious tendencies that have been programmed there deep within. And so it's a challenge. It's a challenge to create new neural pathways that will allow us to make these changes. Right now, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, there's, of course, different opinions, different techniques, and so on. And I won't claim, that whatever I'm saying here would be the way. But all I can say is that as far as I know, there's really 3 ways to start breaking through this barrier that sits between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind to affect change, where we can really start to, move towards achieving our dreams against these limited beliefs. And the number one way that a new, imprint is made into that unconscious mind is shock. For example, I go to a doctor and I get a, cancer diagnosis, like, you got lung cancer, and let's say I'm a smoker and I want to stop smoking. That shock is so intense that it penetrates, into that unconscious mind and creates a new imprint. And it's an instant new learning that the unconscious child experiences. And, the purpose of this unconscious child is to survive, right? So it's going to run a script that will, in its childlike way, is going to help it survive.
Wow.
So in this case, it's the script is, well, you better stop smoking, find an alternative. Now, the difficulty is that we need an alternative. For smoking, the alternative is relatively easy. You die or you smoke. So, it's like, I want to live, so let me stop smoking. And so, but the other way is continuous repetition, right? Because though we have been programmed to conditioning in this first 7 years, it doesn't mean that we stop learning. I mean, after the age of 7, we learn how to drive, we learn how to cook a meal, we learn how to, pass through college. And so, but that takes a lot of effort. And so the idea here is continuous repetition. I have to keep repeating, and it's painful. It takes a long time, but it helps us then write new neural tracks in our mind. It penetrates slowly into that unconscious. And the third way, and that is really the way that we use, is a hypnotic process. And there's many ways you can, call this. A hypnosis is one word. Anytime when you change a brain frequency where the mind becomes more open, more receptive, and that could be in yoga, it's called yoga nidra, it could be guided meditation.
Sure.
Any form of meditation. Yes, right. That changes you from a beta wave to an alpha to a theta wave. And a theta wave is a more suggestible, open, receptive state of mind.
Right.
The concept is whatever you call that technique, it helps then to penetrate into that unconscious mind. And then we can start to have a conversation with that unconscious mind. Oh, there's a language that we need to understand how that unconscious mind operates.
Right.
And there's a whole bunch of conditions. But once you know that language, you can then help to implant new suggestions that will then overcome these limitations.
Gotcha. So now, I've got a question. So a lot of beliefs are established by the time we're 7 years old, and that's the child side of things. And I'm just thinking, reflecting on my own life experience, after 7, there were quite a few events in my life that I would consider, traumatic or impressionable, and probably formed more of these. I wouldn't say that, well, my belief system, whether some of those beliefs were limiting or some of them were, liberating, right? So I wonder at midlife or in your 20s and 30s, how much more we've put on that window in which we view the world, right? It's kind of like an I.S. Nin saying, we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are, right?
Right.
So how much, I guess it would reach 100% of what how we're seeing the world has some kind of tint in front of it. Is that accurate to say?
Yeah, it is. The issue here is that, first of all, we need to understand, and I was referring to that just before, we need to understand the language of the unconscious mind. Like how can I affect change? Now, in NLP, in neuro-linguistic programming,
right,
the idea is that any incoming information that comes into that conscious mind is not just contributing to the behavior of the unconscious mind. It gets deleted, distorted, and generalized. Because the unconscious mind is like a toolbox. And this toolbox are all the impressions that we have gathered, like you say, even after the age of 7, whatever imprint is there, and that forms them behavior. It forms habits. The unconscious mind is a habit machine. It's of the age of about 5 to 7 years old. It's not rational. It runs certain scripts and it's automated behavior. And its purpose is to avoid pain and to go towards, people say pleasure, but I would rather say safety, homeostasis. It wants to continue the system without any sort of noise. And so,
a lot of this happens in the limbic brain, right? It seems to protect us and keep us safe, but sometimes it's using incorrect rules. Is that accurate?
Yeah, the thing is this, from a conscious perspective, and that's what we start to experience as we grow older, from a conscious perspective, we start to discover like this behavior, and this is really your initial question about limiting beliefs, that I see that my behavior is not conducive to success. And so this is a conscious assessment. The unconscious child doesn't qualify behavior. Because it runs on homeostasis, it runs on habit. Your unconscious mind, for example, regulates your blood pressure, your heartbeat, in the same way it regulates your behavior. And so it doesn't qualify at all and says, this is my toolbox. This is the tools that I have And if there's new learning coming in, it's okay, there's another tool that I can use. And, the secret here is that the unconscious child does not understand time.
Right. The brain
You
doesn't
know,
process time.
no, and hence the phenomenon PTSD. When you talk about shock, things that have shaped your mind, you think time will heal it, but it's not true. Only change in consciousness, a change in habits, a new programming will change the behavior. And so this programming that has occurred or is occurring due to shock or other circumstances will just keep on going. It will keep on going until I affect change. Now, this conscious mind, you think, okay, well, 10% of the time I'm conscious, but to be conscious is not so easy. I mean, that's why you see it, for example, in Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. What
Yes.
he really is trying to tell us, try to increase this concept of being aware, because the moment you are not truly focused, you're not creating the future.
Yes.
You're running, like I get up in the morning, I brush my teeth. Have you ever tried to brush your teeth with your other hand? I mean, you don't even know how to brush it, how to hold your brush. It's like, because it's automatic, right? You go to the toilet, you use the toilet paper. I mean, try to do that with the other hand. I mean, it's really impossible. So
not pretty.
then I get up, I make a meal. It's all automated. I get in my car, I drive to my office. It's all automated. So I think I'm awake.
Pieter,
huh?
So much so that oftentimes when we get to work, we don't even remember how we got there.
No.
We shift into that automatic mode,
right?
And we check out consciously.
Yeah, and and we think we're awake and I'm conscious. It's not true. No,
right.
I'm completely subject to my automated behavior. I mean, if you really think of it, how many times during the day am I consciously creating a new future for myself?
Right.
And not to speak of the fact that my conditioning is the product of my parents, because I was 7 years old. I mean, did I have a choice in what my parents presented to me in terms of knowledge? Did I have a choice in the environment? My body is a genetic system that is inherited from my parents, and they got it from their parents.
Right.
So who is running a conscious script towards self-improvement? And then the question comes, what is self-improvement? That's a whole different question. What truly is self-improvement? So to become conscious, I have to stop. Like I was attending a meeting of Thich Nhat Hanh.
Oh yeah.
And he said, try this for fun. When you get out of your car and you walk to your office, in the middle of the parking lot, just stop for a moment. Just stop and suddenly let me smell the roses.
Right.
Like, let me listen to the wind. Let me feel my heartbeat in my chest.
Practice.
And it actually takes an enormous amount of effort to even remember. That's why in hypnosis we have a mantra that we help people. We actually suggest that when they're in this theta state, and that mantra is remember to remember. Because to instruct that unconscious mind, like, hey, if you help me remember to remember, then I can become more conscious, and together we can create a pathway out of these limitations that we find ourselves in. Because I just spend my day on autopilot, and I have never stopped, even once, to meditate, to reflect,
to
consciously bring a change to. Because here's the thing, and this is another thing, when you talk about limited beliefs, right? The idea of homeostasis in the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind doesn't want to, but it also cannot change because it doesn't have tools to change. And so it wants to stay where it is. Now, you from a conscious perspective say, I don't like this, but the unconscious child says, no, I don't have another script to run. I don't have any other tools.
No
And
software.
so though you say, for example, I want to make more money, the unconscious mind says, I don't have a script to do so.
Right.
You may want all you want, but I don't know how to do it. So I'm just going to stay here. Even if I make suddenly a lot of money, I will most probably blow it.
Is it possible for us to provide that with the tools?
Yes, I
Can we
mean,
bring those tools in to change our reality?
yeah, that's the whole point of any sort of teaching, the work that you do,
Hmm.
this paradigm shift. What you're doing is, through the teaching that you're doing, you're basically trying to make your audience open and receptive
Right.
due to your skill, your personality, your kindness, your experience. And when you have a good ambience, a good atmosphere, and you can help people be in a state of receptivity, then you bring that new knowledge into that unconscious mind slowly. Sometimes it can be done very effectively, very quickly, and other times it needs repetition. And so knowledge is everything to the unconscious mind, because the very fact that the unconscious mind is a toolbox that has limited tools, it cannot change unless you provide tools. And so the whole point is to add tools to the toolbox with the instruction to the unconscious mind, or rather making it feel that running this new script will be optimizing my survival. If I'm poor and I have more money, then that survival will be making more money, because I
Right.
won't be under stress, my heart rate will not be, my blood pressure will not be high. And the unconscious mind actually understands that. And so there's different methodologies, whatever form of therapy or teaching or instructions we can provide, but it has to penetrate from the conscious into the unconscious. That is the condition. Otherwise, you will sit there attending a class and it goes in here and it goes out there and
Right.
nothing really has been achieved. So there has
Yes.
to be a condition for receptivity. And that
Yep.
is both the 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 one who brings it with
Hmm.
their skill set, but more than anything else, it is the one receiving, that they are willing and understand, the concept and the principles that, I need to enhance. And here's another important footnote in the unconscious mind. It's not that it's not willing to change per se, but it will invite change when the pain to keep performing the way it is more than the pain to change.
Right. So that makes
Because it
sense.
doesn't want change, it doesn't want pain. So if I find that I hit my head against the wall all the time with my current behavior, that unconscious child is like also hurting, because it's not helping me survive hitting my head against the wall all the time. It's not optimal for my survival. And so, it becomes then suggestible to new learning.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I used to always say, hitting your head against the wall hurts until you stop.
Yeah, yeah,
It's interesting that what you're talking about, because I teach a class on flow state, and that's taking away the distractions
yeah,
so that subconscious mind doesn't engage in things that are counterproductive to to
right,
to create focus, and that's how we experience flow.
right,
and
right,
and when I say that the brain doesn't recognize time or space, what oftentimes people who have achieved flow state will tell you is that it bends time. Either things
right,
slowed down. I can
right.
remember playing football in high school, and I was on the specialty team for kickoffs, and the ball hit the ground in like slow motion, and all of us were kind of like gathered around it, dropping slowly toward the ball. And it was like the weirdest experience of my life, but it's amazing how the
Yeah,
brain processes things, you
yeah,
know? And I think ultimately what you're talking about is really a change in mindset. Would that be accurate to say?
yeah. The key is to break limiting beliefs. You first have to be aware that what I'm doing is not adequate. And whatever field you may be engaging in, it could be in personal relationships, it could be in your business, it could be in your finances, it could be in your, in your
pretty much any aspect of your life, right?
Yeah, any aspect of your life. And so the moment I start to experience that pain, then, I become in a way, ready or suggestible, open right. to change. And then, but what you're saying about flow state, I mean, that's the crux of the matter. I mean, when it comes to teaching or therapy, right? Because
yep.
That is the number one prerequisite if you want to penetrate that unconscious fast, because continuous repetition is obviously what is being used in education and in any sort of programming. But when you really want to affect change quickly, that flow state is prerequisite, because basically what you're doing, I mean, from my perspective, the way I work, we call it the different brain frequencies, right? So in beta, I am so-called conscious. And when you look at the brain waves, it's a short, spiky wave that is, basically you're in full body consciousness.
Right.
Its nature is extreme reactivity. And so in reaction, when I'm reacting on the freeway, I'm not thinking. I'm reacting and I just go about my business.
Yep.
And basically I am at that moment also very much subject to conditioning. If you go one step deeper, like you help somebody relax in gentle meditation or a guided meditation or whatever process you're applying, you have a massage and you work on your head, you listen to beautiful music and you look out at the sunset and you go into the daydream state.
Yep.
But you're not dreaming, you're actually becoming aware of your internal world. And right. Suddenly in that, and when you look at the brainwave, it starts to shrink and stretch a little bit. So there's a longer wave, and in that longer wave, you become more of a mind. You have suddenly.
Is that that's your theta state, right?
No, that's beta. That is alpha. This is
that's
alpha.
Alpha state.
It's in between. Yeah, it's in between. And alpha is more like a light, alteration in your brain. But you will see that the mind becomes already pretty receptive in alpha. And in alpha, you have kind of subordinated the physical world to the mental world.
Gotcha.
Those stuff is going on around you. Somebody may be knocking on the door real loudly. You're not really paying attention. It's not that you're unconscious, but you're living here and the world is here.
Your focus is somewhere else.
Instead of being just a body, I now become a mind. But there is an other state above that, the theta consciousness. And gotcha. Theta is generally either you have to be a very good meditator, or by nature, you have to be very, very attuned. And we can do that with our techniques that we are using. We help people get into that theta state relatively quickly. Alpha is very quick, but theta takes a little bit of time. But it also depends on the mind, how the mind is prepared, how it's attaching to. And the moment you go in theta, now we're having a gateway to the unconscious as well as to things other than ourselves. Because if you look at yourself as an individual, right, as a body, I feel I am very separate from everything else. As a mind, I start to flow more with consciousness of other people's thinking. But when I get in theta, I actually start to resonate with possibilities. And so if you look at the universe as one energy field or an ocean, and I'm a wave in that ocean, then though I'm a wave, an individual, I'm still the ocean. If I get into that flow state of the ocean, then all the resources of that ocean I get access to. If you want abundance, you want health, healing, love, everything you're seeking, the idea is it's all there.
Right. It's been there all along.
If I'm an individual, if I'm encapsulated in ego consciousness, I'm so restless, I'm so striving, I'm such a body, then I have encapsulated myself away from accessing all this abundance and all these possibilities. And so
Right.
I need to make myself higher from body to mind into a more enlightened state where I then start to become in
Universal.
touch. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. So I have on the screen where people can find you. The only thing I don't have is kind of a list of services. Could you share with the audience what are the different things that you do that could help them, or if you have any tips in terms of how they can help themselves?
Yeah. Let's start with what I do. I mean, our specialty, me and my wife, we have the Path of Light Center, which is in Virginia near Roanoke,
Yep.
um, where we do exactly what you and I have discussed. So,
To the T.
to a T, that is exactly the kind of work that we do. People come for a million reasons,
Sure.
but then we also specialize in something that is more of a niche, and it has to do with the belief system that hey, I have not lived just this life, but I have
Right.
lived multiple lives. Could
Right.
it be that certain tendencies I have are not even coming from my parents, but they may be innate within me?
Yep.
And so we go into the past life, and
And life
we
between
help.
lives.
Yes, and then we do life between life. That is really kind of making you disconnect completely with everything you're conditioned with,
Right.
and
The
having kind of a bird's eye view from the perspective of soul consciousness over your life. And so you're detached. And in that state, if you
be,
also then consider, huh? What's that?
becoming in essence pure spirit.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And so, the past lives will give you a perspective about your tendencies and where you're coming from. The life between lives gives you more of a bird's eye view where we are able to. But, I am actually at the moment, me and my wife, we're about to finish a book
Oh, cool.
about a therapy that does the exact same thing, but you don't have to believe in past lives at all.
Gotcha.
And
Gotcha.
so, yeah, so we're about to launch that, and we're achieving the same high state of consciousness, and you don't have, it doesn't really matter what you believe in at all.
Awesome.
And so,
Awesome.
yeah, yeah.
I can't wait until that book comes out. Now we're coming to the end of our time. First of all, Pieter, I want to thank you so much for coming on. Um, we are so connected. It's unbelievable. And I look forward to us doing more episodes together because there's so much that you and Jenna have to offer that really needs to get out there. I think that people are hungering for this awareness. They know that something's missing,
Yeah.
but they don't know how to access it. So I look forward to that being perhaps the topic of our next time that we are able to get together and run another episode. But thank you
Absolutely,
so
I love
much.
it. And there is nothing more beautiful than to share these thoughts and to get into it. So
Absolutely.
it's my joy and my good fortune to know you and to work with you and to continue this.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Pieter.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too.